Greetings, warriors and dreamers. Welcome to the realms of sleep, where tonight we journey through the epic world of God of War. I am your guide through the 9 realms, where ancient gods whisper their secrets and mythic landscapes unfold before us. From the frost-covered mountains of Midgard to the golden halls of Asgard, these tales of gods and giants will carry you into peaceful slumber. Lay down your weapons, rest your weary head, and allow the legends of these powerful beings to become the landscape of your dreams. The battles have been fought, and now is the time for rest. So close your eyes, brave one. Let the fire of the hearth warm you as we begin our journey through realms both wondrous and dangerous. The first flakes had begun falling just after midnight, drifting down through the forest canopy in silent procession that transformed familiar hunting grounds into something altogether more ethereal. By the time Kratos stirred from sleep, his internal rhythms attuned to subtle shifts in weather and opportunity. A gentle blanket of snow had settled across the woodlands surrounding their cabin, muffling ordinary sounds and creating the perfect conditions for tracking. He moved through morning preparations with characteristic quiet efficiency, banking the fire to maintain warmth during their absence, checking provisions and equipment with methodical attention. The falling snow would continue for several hours yet, he judged from wind patterns and cloud formations visible through the cabin's small windows. Ideal circumstances for the kind of patient stalking that separated successful hunters from those who relied purely on luck or overwhelming force. Atreus woke to the soft sounds of preparation, instantly alert despite the early hour, a skill developed through months of similar pre-dawn departures. Through frost-edged glass, he observed the transformed landscape with quiet wonder, noting how snow had gentled harsh angles of winter, bare trees, and created flowing contours where previously sharp distinctions had marked boundaries between earth and fallen logs, between path and undergrowth. The deer will be moving toward the southern meadows, Kratos observed quietly as his son completed his own preparations, seeking shelter from the storm while remaining near water sources. His tone carried the certainty of long experience reading both weather patterns and animal behavior. Fresh snow makes tracking simple for those who know what signs to observe. They departed while full darkness still claimed the forest, navigating by starlight filtered through falling snow and the subtle luminescence that winter nights sometimes possessed, particularly when fresh precipitation created natural reflective surfaces that gathered and redistributed available light. Their breath formed visible clouds in the crisp air, dissipating quickly in the gentle breeze that carried snowflakes in meandering paths between tree trunks. The silence was profound, yet not complete. Snow continued its whispered descent, occasionally releasing accumulated weight from overburdened branches in soft sounds like distant sighs. Somewhere in the forest's depths, an owl called with haunting voice that seemed both mournful and content simultaneously. These ambient sounds created atmosphere conducive to contemplation rather than conversation, encouraging inward focus while maintaining awareness of surrounding environment. Atreus moved with increasing confidence through terrain made unfamiliar by snow's transformative presence, his steps following his father's path precisely to minimize noise while learning to read landscape through its winter disguise. The hunting skills Kratos had taught him over months of similar excursions now served him well. Awareness of wind direction, recognition of animal sign, understanding of how weather conditions affected both prey behavior and tracking opportunities. There, Kratos indicated quietly, pausing beside a cluster of birch trees whose pale bark stood out dramatically against the snow-covered ground. At their base, clearly visible in the fresh powder, deer tracks marked a deliberate path leading deeper into the forest. The prints appeared recent, sharp-edged rather than softened by continued snowfall, suggesting the animal had passed this way within the hour. Atreus knelt to examine the tracks more closely, noting details his father had taught him to observe, the depth suggesting animal size, the spacing indicating pace, the direction revealing intended destination. A doe, he assessed quietly, moving at normal walking speed toward the creek valley. He looked up at Kratos for confirmation, still seeking approval despite growing expertise. Well observed, his father acknowledged, with slight nod that conveyed more satisfaction than lengthy praise might have accomplished. Atreus had developed genuine skill in these practical arts, moving beyond simple mimicry to actual understanding of principles underlying successful hunting. Such progression required patience from both teacher and student, but produced capabilities that would serve him throughout life. They began following the trail with careful attention to their own movement, each step placed deliberately to avoid unnecessary sound while maintaining steady progress. The falling snow worked in their favor, muffling their approach while continuing to preserve the tracks they followed. Occasionally additional sign appeared, a disturbed patch where the deer had poured through snow to reach grass beneath, or marks on tree bark where branches had been brushed aside during passage. As dawn approached, subtle changes in light began filtering through the forest canopy, transforming monochromatic landscape into study of gentle blues and grays. Snow continued falling, but with decreasing intensity. Individual flakes now visible as they drifted between branches, rather than forming continuous curtain of precipitation. The transition from night to day proceeded gradually, without sharp demarcation between dark and light. "Why do we hunt?" Atreus asked quietly, as they paused at the small stream to assess where their quarry had crossed, his voice barely above whisper to avoid disturbing forest peace. The question emerged from contemplation, prompted by morning's meditative atmosphere rather than sudden curiosity. Thoughtful inquiry into principles behind actions they performed together, Kratos considered the question with characteristic thoroughness before responding, recognizing its significance beyond surface simplicity. "For necessity first," he answered eventually, his deep voice equally quiet. "Food, materials, survival when circumstances require such measures." He studied the tracks continuing across frozen stream. Beyond necessity, for skill development, understanding of natural patterns, respect for life through conscious choice rather than careless assumption. This philosophical response aligned with observations Atreus had made during their various hunting expeditions. That his father approached killing with deliberate consideration rather than casual indifference. That each decision to take life was weighed against genuine need rather than mere convenience or entertainment. Such perspective suggested deeper ethical framework than might be expected from one whose reputation had been built primarily on combat effectiveness. "Mother used to say that taking life creates obligation," Atreus recalled softly, memories of Faye's teachings surfacing naturally in the contemplative morning atmosphere. Her voice seemed to echo faintly through the falling snow, gentle wisdom that had shaped his understanding of responsibility and consequence. That we become connected to what we kill, responsible for honoring its sacrifice through purposeful use of what it provides. "Your mother possessed great wisdom regarding such matters," Kratos acknowledged, rare emotion coloring his typically controlled tone. Faye's perspectives on life, death, and moral responsibility had influenced their relationship more than he often admitted, tempering his warrior's pragmatism with considerations of ethics and meaning. She understood balance between necessity and excess, between taking and giving, between strength and restraint. They crossed the stream carefully, using fallen logs as bridges to avoid disturbing water that might alert their quarry to pursuit. On the far bank, deer tracks continued clearly visible in fresh snow, leading toward dense thicket where underbrush provided natural shelter from wind and precipitation. The doe had chosen her route wisely, following terrain features that offered both protection and easy escape routes should danger threaten. The forest grew quieter as they penetrated deeper into its snow-laden depths, even ambient sounds muffled by accumulated precipitation that absorbed rather than reflected acoustic energy. Their own breathing became more noticeable in this hushed environment, visible as vapor clouds that dissipated quickly in cold air. Each footstep required conscious placement to avoid branches hidden beneath snow that might crack under pressure and betray their presence. "She's close," Atreus observed, noting changes in track patterns that suggested their quarry had slowed her pace, possibly to browse on vegetation revealed by pawing through snow cover. Moving more carefully now, checking her surroundings. His assessment demonstrated growing understanding of prey behavior, ability to read subtle signs that revealed animal state of mind through physical evidence. Kratos nodded approval at his son's deduction, pleased by evidence of developing hunting instincts that extended beyond mere technical skill to encompass genuine understanding of animal psychology. Such awareness separated competent hunters from exceptional ones, requiring patience and observation that many never developed despite years of experience in forest environments. They advanced with increased caution now, each movement deliberate and controlled. Through gaps in snow-laden branches ahead, occasional glimpses of brown hide became visible. The doe grazing peacefully in small clearing where wind had cleared patches of ground, exposing grass and fallen acorns beneath winter's accumulated blanket. She appeared healthy and alert, ears moving constantly to monitor surroundings while maintaining focus on foraging activities. "Could you make the shot from here?" Kratos asked quietly, testing his son's assessment of practical shooting conditions. Distance, wind, obstacles, angle of approach, all factors that determined whether attempting shot represented reasonable opportunity or futile gesture likely to wound rather than kill cleanly. Atreus studied the situation carefully, bow held ready but not yet drawn. "Clear line through the branches, maybe 30 paces, he assessed. "Wind is steady from our left, minimal adjustment needed." He paused, considering factors beyond mere technical feasibility. "But she's feeding peacefully. Do we need to take her?" The question reflected growing maturity in his approach to hunting, consideration of necessity rather than mere opportunity, recognition that ability to kill did not automatically justify doing so. Kratos had hoped such ethical development would emerge naturally through experience and example, rather than requiring explicit instruction, and his son's thoughtful hesitation suggested successful internalization of these principles. "We have sufficient provisions for several days," Kratos acknowledged. "Fresh meat would be welcome, but not essential for survival." He observed the doe continuing her peaceful morning meal, unaware of watchers hidden among snow-covered trees. The choice becomes yours to make. Hunter's prerogative, earned through demonstrated skill and understanding. This delegation of decision-making represented significant step in Atreus's development, from student to practiced hunter. No longer would his father make all determinations regarding when and what to kill. That responsibility now rested with the boy himself, guided by principles they had discussed, but ultimately dependent on his own judgment and moral compass. Atreus remained motionless for long moments, bow ready but unstressed, watching the doe's peaceful activity while wrestling with competing considerations. The technical challenge appealed to newly developed skills, clean shot at moderate range under ideal conditions. Yet deeper questions complicated simple pursuit of hunting success. Did taking this particular life serve genuine purpose, or merely demonstrate capability for its own sake? Through falling snow came memory of his mother's voice, gentle wisdom that had shaped his understanding of life's value and death's meaning. Every arrow carries consequence beyond its immediate target. Choose your shots not just for success but for necessity, for respect, for honor to both hunter and hunted. I don't think we need to, he decided finally, lowering his bow with quiet resolution. She's beautiful here, living her life peacefully. Taking her would be taking rather than hunting. He looked to his father for approval or correction, still learning to trust his own moral reasoning in complex situations. Kratos felt profound satisfaction at his son's choice, recognizing wisdom that extended beyond hunting skill to encompass understanding of responsibility and restraint. Many warriors never develop such discernment, viewing capability as sufficient justification for action, regardless of actual necessity or broader consequence. Atreus's decision demonstrated maturity that would serve him well in challenges more significant than forest hunting. Well reasoned, he said simply, the brief acknowledgement carrying weight of deep approval. True hunters know when not to hunt, as clearly as when killing serves proper purpose. He studied the doe continuing her morning foraging, oblivious to how close she had come to becoming their prey. Restraint demonstrates strength rather than weakness, choosing action based on principle rather than mere ability. They remained watching for several more minutes, appreciating the simple peace of wild creature pursuing natural activities in beautiful winter setting. Snow continued falling around them, gentle precipitation that enhanced rather than obscured the scene's quiet beauty. No urgency pressed them toward action or departure. This moment of observation carried value independent of hunting success or failure. The doe eventually finished browsing and moved deeper into the forest, disappearing among snow-laden trees with graceful movements that barely disturbed accumulated powder. Her passing left only tracks and displaced snow to mark her presence. Subtle signs that would fade with continued precipitation until no evidence remained of morning encounter between predator and prey that had concluded without bloodshed. "Shall we follow different trail?" Atreus asked as they prepared to leave their observation position. Morning was advancing steadily, pale light filtering through clouds and snow to create luminous atmosphere that transformed familiar forest into ethereal landscape. Other opportunities for tracking might present themselves if they remained patient and observant. The morning grows late for serious hunting, Kratos observed, noting subtle changes in wind patterns and animal behavior that experienced hunters learn to recognize. Most prey will seek shelter soon, waiting for weather to clear before resuming normal activities. He considered their options thoughtfully. We might track for knowledge rather than killing, reading signs, following trails, learning patterns without need for conclusion. This suggestion appealed to Atreus's developing interest in forest lore and animal behavior. Tracking without intent to kill removed pressure of needing successful conclusion while allowing focus on skill development and understanding of natural systems. Such practice had educational value that extended beyond hunting applications to encompass broader wilderness survival capabilities. They began meandering through snow-covered forest with relaxed awareness, noting various animal signs without committing to following any particular trail. Rabbit tracks crisscrossed between brush piles, where small creatures had foraged during night hours before seeking daylight shelter. Fox prints marked efficient travel routes between hunting grounds and den sites. Occasional bird sign indicated where ground-feeding species had scratched through snow in search of seeds and insects. Each animal leaves story in snow, Kratos observed as they paused to examine a particularly clear set of tracks crossing their size, speed, purpose, destination, all written in marks they cannot avoid making. He knelt to indicate specific details Atreus might overlook. Here, hesitation before changing direction. There, increased pace, suggesting alarm or urgency. These lessons in track interpretation fascinated Atreus, revealing how much information experienced readers could extract from seemingly simple impressions in snow or soil. Each print told part of larger narrative about animal behavior, environmental conditions, temporal sequences of events. Mastering such interpretation required years of practice, but provided invaluable insight into natural world patterns. As morning progressed toward midday, snow gradually ceased falling, though heavy clouds remained overhead, promising potential resumption of precipitation later. The forest settled into winter quiet, punctuated occasionally by distant bird calls or subtle sounds of animals moving through sheltered areas. No immediate drama disturbed the peaceful atmosphere. No predator-prey encounters, no territorial disputes, no urgent survival challenges. It's beautiful when it's this quiet, Atreus observed, pausing in small clearing where accumulated snow created natural sculpture garden among fallen logs and standing trees. Silence had become almost tangible presence, wrapping around them like comfortable blanket that encouraged contemplation rather than conversation. Like the whole forest is resting. Kratos nodded agreement, finding unexpected peace in morning's gentle rhythms after lifetime dominated by conflict and urgency. These quiet interludes with his son provided welcome contrast to demands of their larger journey, moments of simple presence that required nothing beyond mutual companionship and shared appreciation of natural beauty. From somewhere deeper in forest came distant wolf call, not threatening howl, but communication between pack members, perhaps coordinating morning activities or maintaining contact across scattered hunting grounds. The sound carried clearly through still air, wild voice that belonged to landscape without intruding on human experience of it. They're not hunting us, Atreus noted, recognizing difference between various wolf vocalizations his father had taught him to distinguish as talking to each other. He listened as faint answer came from different direction, pack members maintaining awareness of relative positions while pursuing separate activities. Wolves possess complex social structures, Kratos explained, pleased by his son's growing ability to interpret natural sounds. Communication serves many purposes beyond simple warning or threat. Territory marking, coordination, emotional expression, similar in some ways to human interaction patterns. The comparison between animal and human social behavior offered useful perspective on both. They continued their leisurely exploration, following no particular route, but allowing curiosity and aesthetic appreciation to guide their movements through winter landscape. Occasionally, interesting geological formations or unusual tree growth patterns provided natural waypoints for brief rest stops and informal education about forest ecology and survival techniques. Mother used to bring me out in snow like this when I was younger, Atreus recalled, childhood memories surfacing naturally in contemplative atmosphere. She'd show me how different plants looked in winter, which ones stayed useful even when everything else seemed dead or sleeping. Faye's practical knowledge had encompassed both hunting skills and botanical wisdom, preparing him for wilderness life from early age. Your mother understood survival from many perspectives, Kratos acknowledged. Combat effectiveness represents only one aspect of wilderness competence. Knowledge of plants, weather patterns, animal behavior, seasonal cycles, all equally important for long-term success in natural environments. Such comprehensive understanding distinguished temporary survival from sustainable living. They discovered small, frozen pond tucked between low hills, its surface covered with thin layer of snow that revealed animal tracks crossing from bank to bank. Several species had used this natural highway during night hours. Deer, foxes, smaller creatures whose prints created intricate patterns in powder overlay. The pond served as community resource, neutral ground where various animals could access water without territorial conflict. Look at how they all use the same crossing points, Atreus observed, studying convergent trail patterns that led to specific access locations. Even different animals seem to prefer certain routes. Animal behavior often demonstrated practical wisdom that humans could learn from. Efficient solutions developed through generations of experience rather than theoretical planning. Established trails serve multiple species, Kratos confirmed. Game paths represent accumulated knowledge, safest routes, most efficient travel, reliable resources. Following such trails provides education in natural navigation and territorial understanding. Reading landscape through animal perspective offered valuable supplement to purely human approaches to wilderness travel. Near Pond's Edge, they found clear evidence of recent beaver activity. Gnawed stumps, drag marks where branches had been transported toward water, partially visible dam construction that would alter local water flow patterns. Such industrious modification of environment demonstrated animal intelligence and planning capability that commanded respect from observant humans. They're building something permanent, Batram noted, examining neat cuts where beaver teeth had sectioned tree trunk into manageable segments. Not just surviving day to day, but creating lasting changes to improve their habitat. Animal architecture impressed him, with combination of instinctive knowledge and practical problem solving. As they completed circuit around Frozen Pond, gentle snow began falling again, larger flakes that drifted down with lazy motion through still air. The renewed precipitation enhanced already magical atmosphere, creating sense of enclosure and intimacy within vast forest environment. Each snowflake caught momentary light before settling into accumulating blankets that continued transforming familiar landscape. "We should return soon," Kratos observed, noting advancing morning and potential for heavier snowfall that might complicate navigation back to their cabin. "Weather may intensify, making travel more difficult if we delay too long." Practical considerations balanced aesthetic appreciation when survival depended on sound judgment regarding natural conditions. They began meandering homeward through routes that allowed continued observation of winter forest, without urgent pace that might disturb still receptive wildlife. Morning hunt had evolved into peaceful exploration that served educational and bonding purposes beyond original tracking objectives. Such flexibility in plans often produced unexpected benefits when circumstances suggested alternative approaches. "I'm glad we didn't take the deer," Atreus said as they walked, content with morning's resolution, despite technically unsuccessful hunting outcome. This felt more like appreciation than hunting, like Mother used to do, learning from watching rather than just taking what we needed. His growing wisdom impressed Kratos with mature understanding of different approaches to wilderness interaction. "Observation teaches as much as action," his father agreed, understanding natural patterns, animal behavior, seasonal changes. Knowledge gained through patient watching serves lifetime purposes beyond immediate hunting success. Such perspective distinguished sustainable relationship with natural world from purely extractive approach that yielded short-term benefits at long-term cost. Their return journey provided opportunity for reviewing morning's lessons and observations, informal discussion that reinforced learning while maintaining peaceful atmosphere established during early hours. Snow continued falling intermittently, sometimes heavy enough to limit visibility, other times light enough to permit clear observation of surrounding forest features. Different birds are active now, Atreus noted, hearing calls that hadn't been present during pre-dawn departure. Morning shift change in forest activities. His growing attention to such natural rhythms demonstrated developing wilderness awareness that would serve him well in future challenges. Daylight brings different opportunities and risks, Kratos explained. Animals adjust activities according to light conditions, weather patterns, predator behavior. Understanding these cycles provides tactical advantage for both hunting and survival in wild environments. Knowledge of natural timing could mean difference between success and failure in critical situations. Near familiar landmarks indicating approach to their home territory, they encountered fresh rabbit tracks that hadn't been present during morning departure. Small creatures had taken advantage of daylight hours to forage in areas they avoided during darkness, when nocturnal predators posed greater threats. Such behavioral patterns illustrated constant adaptation that characterized successful wilderness survival. Everything balances, Atreus observed, considering complex relationships between species, timing, environmental conditions that determine forest life patterns. Predators and prey, active and rest periods, individual needs and community resources. Natural systems demonstrated sophisticated organization without central planning or conscious coordination. Their cabin appeared through falling snow as welcome sight, familiar refuge that represented safety, warmth, comfort after morning spent in increasingly cold conditions. Smoke rose from banked fire that had maintained minimal heat during their absence, ready to be revived for cooking and warmth. Home had never felt more appreciated than after peaceful but chilling hours in winter forest. Successful morning, Kratos assessed as they approached threshold, evaluating expedition not by conventional hunting standards but by broader measures of education, experience, father-son bonding. Skills demonstrated, knowledge gained, time well spent in natural environment. Such outcomes often proved more valuable than meat or hides acquired through successful kills. Inside warmth of cabin, they shed outer layers, while reviving fire to comfortable level for rest and meal preparation. Morning's experiences had created shared memories that would be recalled and discussed in future conversations, building foundation of common experience that strengthened relationship between father and son. Next time, Atreus said as he settled before growing fire, maybe we could track the wolves we heard, learn about their territory and activities. His curiosity extended beyond immediate practical needs to encompass broader understanding of forest ecosystem and animal behavior patterns. Such interests promised continued learning opportunities during future expeditions. Wolves require greater caution, Kratos warned, though not dismissing suggestion entirely. Intelligent predators with strong territorial instincts and complex social structures. Observation from distance might prove educational, but close approach could be dangerous without proper preparation. Risk assessment remained a crucial component of wilderness education. Snow continued falling beyond cabin walls, gentle precipitation that enhanced rather than threatened their comfortable shelter. Inside, warmth and food awaited, along with opportunity to reflect on morning's experiences and plan future adventures that would continue developing wilderness skills and father-son relationship. The hunt that had begun before dawn concluded not with kill or dramatic encounter, but with quiet satisfaction derived from time spent together in natural environment, learning through observation rather than action, appreciating beauty and peace that winter forest offered to those patient enough to receive its gifts. Such mornings created memories more valuable than any trophy. wisdom more lasting than immediate success. Outside, snow fell steadily on transformed landscape where deer, rabbits, foxes, and countless other creatures continued their own daily struggles and simple pleasures, unaware how closely they had been observed by human visitors who chose to watch rather than hunt, to learn rather than take, to appreciate rather than merely utilize the wild world that surrounded and sustained them all. As afternoon settled over their cabin, the snowfall intensified once more, transforming the gentle morning precipitation into more substantial winter storm. Through frost-etched windows, they watched familiar landmarks disappear beneath accumulating white blanket that reshaped the forest into entirely new geography. The trees that had served as navigation markers now appeared as anonymous mounds of snow, while paths they had traveled that morning became invisible beneath pristine surface that revealed no trace of previous passage. The storm grows stronger, Kratos observed, assessing wind patterns and precipitation intensity with practiced eye of one who had weathered countless such tempests. We chose our timing well. Another hour in the forest might have made return journey considerably more challenging. Weather's unpredictable nature demanded constant respect and careful attention to changing conditions. Atreus pressed his face against cold glass, marveling at transformation occurring beyond their warm shelter. "It's like the forest is being reborn," he said wonderingly. Everything familiar becoming something completely new. Snow possessed almost magical quality in its ability to alter landscapes so thoroughly that yesterday's world became today's foreign territory, requiring fresh navigation and interpretation. The fire crackled contentedly in stone hearth, radiating warmth that contrasted pleasantly with increasingly fierce wind rattling shutters and sending occasional puffs of smoke back down chimney. Their cabin represented civilization's most basic but essential achievement. Reliable shelter that permitted survival and comfort during nature's more hostile demonstrations of power. "Tell me about the tracks we saw," Kratos requested, settling into a chair beside fire while gesturing for his son to join him. What stories did they tell beyond simple identification of species? The morning's observations provided rich material for discussion that would reinforce learning while passing time during storm's duration. Atreus arranged himself comfortably on thick fur rug, mind returning to various signs they had encountered during their forest exploration. The rabbit tracks showed panic near the owl tree. Deeper impressions, longer spacing between prints where it ran after hearing danger overhead. His analysis demonstrated growing sophistication in reading animal behavior through physical evidence. "And what does that suggest about timing?" his father prompted, encouraging deeper interpretation of observed facts. "The owl was hunting recently, maybe just before we arrived in that area," Atreus reasoned. "Rabbits survived because it stayed alert and reacted quickly to warning sounds." He paused, considering broader implications. "Every animal lives by reading signs constantly. Weather, predators, food sources, safe routes. Just like we do, but their survival depends on it every moment." Such recognition of parallel survival challenges between human and animal worlds demonstrated mature understanding that extended beyond superficial observations to encompass fundamental life principles. All creatures faced similar basic needs: food, shelter, safety, reproduction, though methods for addressing these requirements vary dramatically between species. "The deer we followed showed similar awareness," Kratos added, reinforcing these connections. "Route selection, avoiding exposed areas, frequent pauses to assess surroundings, feeding patterns that balance nutrition needs against security concerns. Survival requires constant vigilance, regardless of species." Outside, wind howled with increasing intensity, while snow continued its relentless accumulation. Such storms could persist for days, transforming landscape completely while testing both human preparation and natural adaptation strategies. Their cabin's solid construction and adequate provisions allowed them to weather such challenges comfortably, but less prepared travelers might face serious difficulties. "Mother told me about the Great Winter when she was young," Atreus recalled, memories of Faye's stories surfacing naturally in current circumstances. Snow fell for weeks without stopping, deeper than anyone could remember. Some villages were completely buried. People had to dig tunnels between houses just to visit neighbors. Historical context provided perspective on current storms' relative severity. "Such winters test everything," Kratos acknowledged, having experienced similar severe weather in various realms and climates throughout his extensive travel. Reparation, cooperation, resource management, psychological endurance. Communities that survive extreme conditions possess all these qualities in sufficient measure. Harsh weather revealed character in individuals and societies alike. The afternoon progressed peacefully within their warm shelter while storm raged beyond sturdy walls. They shared a simple meal of preserved foods, supplemented by fresh bread. Atreus had learned to bake, using techniques Faye had taught him. Domestic skills proved as valuable as hunting or combat abilities when circumstances required self-sufficiency in isolated locations. "Do you think we'll see the deer again?" Atreus wondered aloud, thoughts returning to morning's peaceful encounter. "When the storm clears and we go out hunting again?" His question reflected genuine interest in individual animal welfare rather than mere hunting opportunities, suggesting emotional connection that extended beyond predator-prey relationships. "Perhaps," Kratos replied thoughtfully. "Deer establish territories they know intimately. Food sources, water access, shelter locations, escape routes. Unless forced to relocate by extreme circumstances, she likely remains in familiar area where we encountered her." Animal behavior patterns provided predictability that experienced hunters could utilize for future planning. "I hope she finds good shelter during this storm," the boy said softly, genuine concern evident in his voice. "Somewhere warm and safe, where she can wait for better weather." His empathy for creatures he had chosen not to hunt demonstrated emotional maturity that complemented growing practical skills. Such compassion did not represent weakness in Kratos' assessment, but rather strength that distinguished thoughtful warriors from mere killers. Those who understood life's value made better decisions about when ending it served necessary purposes, versus when restraint honored both hunter and hunted through conscious choice rather than instinctive aggression. As evening approached, storm showed no signs of diminishing intensity. If anything, wind grew fiercer, while snowfall increased to near whiteout conditions that eliminated visibility beyond few yards from cabin walls. Such severe weather created natural imprisonment that could last days depending on storm system's size and movement patterns. "We might remain here longer than originally planned," Kratos observed, assessing their supply situation with characteristic thoroughness. Food adequate for extended stay, firewood sufficient for several days, water accessible from covered well, comfortable circumstances for waiting out whatever weather may bring. Proper preparation eliminated anxiety about temporary confinement. Atreus felt no concern about extended isolation. Their cabin represented security and comfort, enhanced by father's knowledgeable presence. "Could you teach me more about reading weather signs?" he requested, eager to expand practical knowledge during enforced indoor time. "How you knew this morning that stronger storm was coming?" This request pleased Kratos, who recognized educational opportunity in sharing accumulated wisdom about natural phenomena. "Cloud formations provide primary indicators," he began, settling into teaching mode that had become comfortable routine during their months together. Light, color, movement patterns, interaction with wind currents, all reveal information about developing weather systems. He described subtle atmospheric changes that preceded major storms, shifts in air pressure that animals detected instinctively but humans must learn to recognize consciously, temperature variations that indicated approaching weather fronts, wind pattern alterations that suggested system intensity and probable duration. Such knowledge had saved his life repeatedly during travels through hostile environments. Your mother possessed exceptional weather sense, he added, honoring Faye's practical wisdom, could predict storms hours before obvious signs appeared, knew which mountains' passes would remain clear when others became impassable, understood seasonal timing with accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. Her death had eliminated valuable resource for weather prediction and natural navigation. Night settled completely while storm maintained fierce intensity, wind rattling cabin structure with regular gusts that tested construction quality without threatening actual structural integrity. Their shelter had been built by someone who understood northern climate demands: thick walls, solid foundation, efficient fireplace design that maximized heat output while minimizing fuel consumption. Listen to the different sounds, Kratos instructed as they sat before crackling fire. Wind carries information about its strength, direction, potential duration, based on acoustic patterns that experienced listeners learn to interpret. Weather education extended beyond visual observation to encompass auditory analysis of atmospheric conditions. Atreus concentrated on various sounds penetrating their shelter: the deep moan of sustained wind pressure, sharper whistles where air moved through gaps in forest canopy, occasional groaning from trees stressed by accumulated snow weight. Each sound told part of larger story about current conditions and probable development patterns. It's like the whole forest is singing, he observed poetically, hearing musical qualities in storm's cacophony. Scary but beautiful at the same time. Natural phenomena often combined intimidating power with aesthetic appeal that commanded respect rather than simple fear or appreciation alone. Power and beauty frequently coincide in natural world, Kratos agreed, recognizing wisdom in his son's observation. Storms, waterfalls, mountain peaks, ocean waves, all demonstrate forces that inspire both awe and caution in prudent observers. Understanding such duality helped develop appropriate responses to natural phenomena. They prepared for sleep as storm continued its relentless assault on landscape beyond their protected refuge. Tomorrow might bring continued harsh weather or gradual clearing that would permit assessment of transformation wrought by night's accumulation. Either possibility held interest for those curious about nature's capacity for dramatic change. Will everything look completely different when the storm ends? Atreus wondered as he arranged his sleeping furs near fire's warmth. All our landmarks buried, familiar paths completely changed. Such thorough transformation fascinated him, with its implications for navigation and environmental familiarity. Landscape alteration depends on storm duration and intensity, Kratos explained. Brief, heavy snowfall creates temporary changes easily overcome by wind and melting. Extended, severe weather can reshape terrain for months, requiring complete relearning of familiar territory. Natural forces possess power to alter human environmental knowledge dramatically within short time periods. The boy settled into comfortable position while contemplating morning's hunting expedition and afternoon's enforced shelter. Today was perfect, he concluded softly. Even without taking the deer, maybe especially because we didn't. Just being out there together, learning to read signs, choosing respect over killing. Mature assessment reflected growing wisdom about values beyond immediate success. Days that teach prove more valuable than those that merely provide, his father agreed, pleased by evidence of developing philosophical understanding. Knowledge gained through patient observation serves lifetime purposes, while individual hunting successes fade into memory, unless accompanied by broader learning. Educational experiences accumulated compound value over time. Sleep came easily despite storm's continued fury. Secure shelter and emotional satisfaction from day's experiences creating conditions conducive to restful slumber. Dreams carried them back through snow-covered forest, where deer grazed peacefully, while human observers chose appreciation over exploitation, learning over taking, wisdom over simple success. Outside, snow continued falling through darkness, while wind sculpted drifts that would greet them with entirely transformed landscape when morning light revealed storm's overnight accomplishments. The forest would emerge from winter's harsh embrace bearing new geography that demanded fresh exploration and interpretation. Another chapter in ongoing education that wilderness provided to those patient enough to receive its teaching. In warmth and safety of their cabin, father and son rested peacefully, while nature demonstrated its awesome power to reshape familiar world into something requiring renewed discovery and understanding. Tomorrow would bring fresh opportunities for tracking, observation, and quiet philosophy, conducted beneath whatever sky storm's passage might reveal. The storm that had raged through the night gradually exhausted itself as dawn approached, its fierce winds settling into gentle breezes that stirred the uppermost branches of snow-laden trees. When Kratos stirred from sleep, the profound silence that greeted him spoke of weather's passage and winter's temporary peace, restored to the forests surrounding their cabin. Through frost-edged windows, the world beyond appeared utterly transformed. Where familiar landmarks had stood the previous morning, anonymous mounds of pristine snow created entirely new geography that would require careful relearning. The storm had accomplished in one night what months of gradual accumulation might have achieved. Complete reshaping of their known environment into something both beautiful and subtly treacherous. Atreus woke to his father's quiet movements as preparations began for assessing the storm's impact on their surroundings. The boy's first conscious act was to peer outside, marveling at the extraordinary depth of fresh accumulation that had buried even prominent features beneath a uniform white blanket. "Everything's gone," he whispered wonderingly. "Our usual paths, the landmarks we use for navigation, covered completely." "Not gone," Kratos corrected gently, beginning his methodical check of their cabin's integrity after the severe weather. "Hidden temporarily. Spring will reveal what winter has concealed, though perhaps in different arrangements than before. Natural forces possess power to alter familiar terrain, while preserving its essential character beneath seasonal disguise. The profound transformation awaiting their exploration would demand new approach to wilderness navigation, one that relied less on memorized routes and familiar markers, more on fundamental understanding of terrain features that persisted beneath snow's concealing presence. Reading landscape through winter's disguise represented advanced skill that separated competent woodsmen from true masters of wilderness travel. As they prepared for their first venture into this reborn world, neither father nor son could anticipate how completely the storm's passage had altered not just the visible landscape, but the very traces of all who had walked these paths before. In snow this deep and fresh, even the most persistent signs of previous passage would require exceptional skill to detect, if they remained detectable at all beneath winter's comprehensive erasure. of history written in earth and stone. The morning mist hung low between the trees as Kratos and Atreus followed the deer tracks through the quiet forest. Each hoof print pressed clearly into the fresh snow told a story of cautious movement, the animal pausing frequently to test the air before continuing its path through the winter landscape. Atreus moved with practiced silence beside his father, bow ready but relaxed, his breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. The tracks led them deeper into unfamiliar territory, winding between massive pine trunks whose branches created a natural cathedral overhead. Occasional patches of sunlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating floating snow crystals that drifted on barely perceptible air currents. The forest felt expectant, as if holding its breath in anticipation of some quiet revelation. The stride pattern suggests a young buck, Atreus observed softly, kneeling to examine a particularly clear impression, moving steadily but not fleeing, probably heading toward water. He glanced ahead through the trees, noting how the terrain sloped gently downward. There should be a stream somewhere ahead. Kratos nodded approval at his son's tracking skills, gained through months of patient instruction and practical application. The boy had developed keen awareness of forest signs, reading stories written in disturbed snow, broken twigs, and subtle changes in wildlife behavior. These abilities served purposes beyond hunting, providing valuable intelligence about their environment and potential threats moving through their territory. They continued, following the clear trail, their footsteps muffled by snow that crunched softly underfoot. The tracks led them through a natural gap between two large boulders, then down a gentle slope where scattered rocks created natural stepping stones across uneven ground. Here the deer had moved more carefully, its prints showing where it had tested each step before committing full weight. The sound reached them first, a subtle murmuring that suggested flowing water somewhere ahead. Not the rushing of a significant river, but the gentler voice of a smaller stream, perhaps partially frozen in winter's grip. Atreus quickened his pace slightly, eager to confirm his prediction about the deer's destination, while Kratos maintained steady progress, alert for any changes in their surroundings. As they crested a small rise, the stream revealed itself, a ribbon of dark water winding between snow-covered banks, its surface partially glazed with thin ice that caught and reflected the pale winter light. The deer tracks led directly toward this natural boundary, clear and purposeful, until they reached the stream's edge, where they simply disappeared. Atreus frowned, studying the ground where the trail ended abruptly at the water's margin. No prints continued on the opposite bank, no signs of struggle or disturbance in the snow. The tracks simply ceased, as if the deer had vanished upon touching the stream's surface. "That's strange," he murmured, walking carefully along the bank to examine both directions. "The ice looks too thin to support crossing, but there's no indication the deer turned upstream or down." He glanced at his father with puzzled expression. Where could it have gone? Kratos approached the stream's edge with measured steps, testing the ice's thickness with careful pressure from his boot. The surface yielded slightly, creating hairline cracks that spread outward in delicate patterns before stopping. Too fragile to support significant weight, confirming Atreus' assessment that crossing here would be impractical for deer or human alike. Animals sometimes follow streams rather than crossing them, he suggested, though his tone indicated uncertainty about this explanation. In his experience, prey animals preferred direct routes to safety rather than extended travel along exposed waterways. The deer's sudden disappearance suggested either hidden crossing point or phenomenon beyond ordinary explanation. Atreus continued his careful examination of the stream bank, looking for any sign that might resolve this mystery. As he moved methodically upstream, something caught his attention. Not related to the missing deer tracks, but distinctly out of place in the natural forest setting. Carved into the bark of an ancient birch tree, symbols waited with patient stillness. "Father," he called softly, approaching the marked tree with careful steps. "There are runes here. Old ones, I think." He studied the carved symbols with growing interest, recognizing certain characters from his mother's teachings, while noting others that seemed unfamiliar or variant forms. Kratos joined his son beside the birch, examining the carved marks with practical assessment. The runes appeared weathered but deliberately maintained, their edges still sharp enough for clear reading despite obvious age. Someone had taken care to preserve these symbols, returning periodically to refresh the carving or protect it from natural deterioration. "Can you read them?" he asked, knowing Atreus's facility with ancient languages often exceeded what formal instruction alone could provide. The boy seemed to possess intuitive understanding of runic meanings that suggested deeper connection to their cultural origins. Atreus traced individual symbols with his finger, not quite touching the bark but following their carved lines with focused attention. His expression shifted between concentration and emerging comprehension, as familiar patterns resolved into readable meaning, while unfamiliar elements gradually surrendered their secrets. "It's unusual," he said finally. "Part instruction, part invitation. Something about those who seek what hides in plain sight, and paths revealed to patient observers." He studied the remaining symbols with thoughtful attention. "There's more, but it's written in an older dialect. The grammar is different than Mother taught me." The carved message continued below the initial lines, symbols growing more complex and interconnected, as if building towards specific revelation. Some characters appeared to be modified versions of standard runes. Their meanings shifted through subtle alterations that created nuanced concepts not easily expressed in conventional writing. "This symbol," Atreus indicated a particularly intricate carving, "usually means hidden or concealed, but the way it's modified here suggests something more like waiting to be discovered. And this one beside it," he paused, working through the linguistic puzzle. "I think it means crossing or transition, but with implications of choosing rather than being forced." Kratos listened to these translations with growing attention, recognizing potential significance beyond casual forest marking. Throughout their journey, they had encountered various signs and symbols that proved relevant to their larger purpose. Ancient runes in unexpected locations often indicated sites of particular importance, or crossroads where significant choices awaited. "The deer," Atreus said suddenly, connection crystallizing in his mind. "What if the tracks didn't just disappear? What if they crossed somewhere we can't see because we're not looking in the right way?" He gestured toward the stream, then back to the carved runes. "B symbols mention hidden paths. Maybe they're literal instructions." This possibility aligned with their growing understanding of how magic operated in practical situations, not through obvious displays of power, but through subtle alterations to natural patterns that required awareness to perceive. If the stream concealed crossing point, visible only to those who knew proper technique for revealing it, that would explain the deer's apparent vanishing. "We should be cautious," Kratos warned, though his tone suggested consideration rather than outright rejection of his son's theory. Unknown magic often carries unexpected consequences, regardless of apparent purpose. His experience with divine manipulations had taught him skepticism regarding phenomena that seemed too convenient or helpful. Atreus nodded understanding, sharing his father's wariness while feeling drawn to explore this mystery further. The runes seemed peaceful in their intention, offering guidance rather than commanding obedience. Yet prudence demanded careful approach to any magical manifestation they encountered in unfamiliar territory. "What if we just observe first?" he suggested. "Try to understand what the runes are indicating without actively using whatever they're describing." He looked back at the carved symbols with scholarly interest. "There might be more information encoded here that I haven't deciphered yet." This methodical approach appealed to Kratos' tactical mindset, allowing intelligence gathering without premature commitment to potentially dangerous course of action. They could study the situation thoroughly before deciding whether to proceed with whatever the runes suggested or simply note the location for possible future reference. Atreus returned to careful examination of the carved symbols, working through their meanings with systematic attention to detail. Some characters revealed themselves more readily upon second study, their significance becoming clear through context provided by surrounding runes. Others remained cryptic, requiring deeper analysis or perhaps specific perspective he hadn't yet achieved. "Here," he said, pointing to a sequence near the bottom of the carved message, "these symbols describe a method, something about looking beyond the surface and trusting what the eye doesn't see. It's almost like instructions for a specific type of perception." He studied the stream from this new perspective, attempting to follow whatever guidance the runes provided. At first, nothing appeared different. The water flowed as before, ice glinting in afternoon light, while snow-covered banks stretched in both directions. Then, gradually, subtle anomalies began to emerge. The ice formations weren't quite random, he realized. Certain patterns repeated at specific intervals, creating configurations that resembled deliberate arrangement rather than natural formation. Where the deer tracks ended, these patterns clustered most densely, suggesting concentration of whatever force shaped them. "Father, look at the ice," he said quietly, gesturing toward the patterns he had noticed. "It's not forming randomly. There's organization to it, like someone arranged it deliberately." Kratos studied the stream's surface with enhanced attention, initially seeing only typical winter phenomena, before gradually recognizing the subtle regularities his son had identified. The patterns were indeed too consistent for pure chance, though so subtly integrated with natural ice formation that they remained nearly invisible without specific focus. "Camouflaged construction," he observed, appreciating the sophisticated technique involved. "Designed to appear natural while serving deliberate purpose." His warrior's eye recognized tactical advantage in such concealment, creating functional structures that avoided detection through mimicry of ordinary environmental features. The realization suggested that the deer had indeed crossed the stream, utilizing pathway that remained hidden from casual observation. Through clever integration with natural phenomena, the runes provided necessary insight for recognizing this concealed crossing, accessible to those who understood the proper way of looking, but invisible to ordinary perception. "Should we try following the deer's path?" Atreus asked, excitement balanced by appropriate caution. The prospect of discovering hidden magical construction appealed to his curiosity, while his father's teachings about prudence in unknown situations provided counterweight to impulsive action. Kratos considered this question carefully, weighing potential benefits against possible risks. Their hunt for the deer had already led to this interesting discovery. Following through might yield additional insights, valuable for their ongoing journey. Yet magical constructions often included defensive measures against unauthorized use, particularly when camouflaged so thoroughly. "We proceed carefully," he decided finally. "Test each step, maintain awareness of our surroundings, and retreat immediately if circumstances suggest danger." His tone conveyed both permission and warning, trusting his son's judgment while establishing clear parameters for safe exploration. Atreus approached the stream's edge with methodical caution, studying the ice patterns more closely to understand how they might provide stable crossing points. Up close, the organizational structure became more apparent. Certain formations appeared solid despite seeming fragility, while others showed hairline stress patterns, suggesting they would support minimal weight at best. Following the subtle visual cues provided by pattern recognition, he identified what appeared to be the beginning of a concealed pathway. The ice here looked no different from surrounding formations, yet something about its configuration suggested stability that might support careful passage. The deer's vanished tracks aligned perfectly with this starting point. "I think this is where it begins," he said, indicating the specific location where patterns suggested hidden crossing commenced. "The runes mention trusting what the eye doesn't see. Maybe that means believing the path exists even when it's not obviously visible." Taking deep breaths to center himself, Atreus extended his foot carefully toward the indicated starting point. His boot touched what appeared to be thin ice that should have cracked immediately under any pressure, yet the surface held firm, supporting his weight without apparent strain. The concealed pathway was indeed real, merely hidden through sophisticated magical camouflage. "It holds," he reported with quiet amazement, testing the stability with increasing confidence while maintaining connection to solid ground. "The ice is much thicker than it appears. Or there's something underneath providing additional support." Kratos watched his son's careful testing with alert attention, ready to provide assistance should the concealed crossing prove unstable or deceptive. His tactical experience included numerous situations where apparent safety had transformed into immediate danger without warning, making vigilance essential even during seemingly successful exploration. "Continue slowly," he instructed, preparing to follow once Atreus had demonstrated the path's reliability through practical use. "Test each step before committing full weight, and signal if anything feels uncertain." Step by careful step, Atreus made his way across the stream, along the hidden pathway revealed through runic guidance and careful observation. The crossing required faith as much as skill, trusting camouflaged stability, while maintaining awareness of genuine hazards that might exist, alongside deliberate concealment. Midway across, he paused to examine his surroundings from this unique perspective. The stream looked different from the pathway's center, revealing details invisible from either bank. Beneath the water's surface, additional patterns became apparent. Carved stones arranged in specific configurations that provided foundation for the concealed crossing, their work hidden by flowing water and reflective ice formations. "There's an entire structure down there," he called back to his father. Carefully placed stones creating pathway foundation, all hidden beneath the waterline. Incredible craftsmanship, functional but completely invisible unless you know exactly where to look. This discovery reinforced their growing appreciation for the sophistication of ancient magical construction. Rather than relying on obvious displays of power, the creators had achieved their purpose through subtle integration with natural phenomena, creating lasting functionality that avoided detection through careful mimicry of environmental features. Atreus completed his crossing successfully, reaching the far bank where the deer's tracks resumed their clear progression through undisturbed snow. The animal had indeed used the concealed pathway, following knowledge passed down through generations of forest inhabitants, or perhaps guided by instinctive sensitivity to magical constructions. "The tracks continue normally on this side," he reported, studying the clear impressions that picked up precisely where they had vanished at the opposite bank. The deer knew about the hidden crossing and used it routinely, probably part of its regular territory navigation. Kratos began his own careful crossing, following his son's successful route while maintaining independent assessment of each his greater weight required additional caution, yet the concealed pathway supported his passage without difficulty, confirming the substantial engineering that had gone into its construction. As he crossed, he studied the hidden foundation work, visible through clear sections of flowing water. The arranged stones showed evidence of careful selection and precise placement, creating structure that would endure seasonal changes while maintaining concealment. The level of skill involved suggested master craftsmen working under guidance of considerable magical knowledge. Professional construction, he observed upon reaching the far bank, built to last, designed to remain hidden, serving practical purpose without drawing attention. His appreciation for the technical achievement was evident, despite his general skepticism regarding magical solutions to practical problems. They stood together on the stream's far side, studying the resumed deer tracks that led away through forest terrain, similar to what they had left behind. The hidden crossing had provided passage between areas that appeared geographically continuous but might serve different purposes, or possess distinct characteristics not immediately apparent. The runes mentioned paths revealed to patient observers, Atreus recalled, looking back toward the concealed crossing they had successfully navigated. I wonder what other hidden features exist in these woods, waiting for the right perspective to recognize them. This question carried implications beyond immediate curiosity. If their territory contained multiple concealed constructions like the stream crossing, understanding their locations and purposes might provide significant advantages for navigation, safety, or resource access. Ancient builders had clearly possessed both skill and motivation for creating such elaborate hidden infrastructure. We continue following the deer, Kratos decided, maintaining focus on their original purpose while acknowledging the value of their discovery. But we remain alert for additional signs of concealed construction. This crossing suggests organized development of hidden pathways throughout this region. The deer tracks led them away from the stream into forest terrain that gradually shifted in character, though the changes remained subtle enough to escape casual notice. Trees grew slightly taller here, their trunks showing fewer scars from winter storms or wildlife activity. The underbrush appeared more deliberately arranged, creating natural corridors that guided movement along specific routes. It feels different on this side, Atreus observed, unable to identify specific changes that created this impression, yet certain that their environment had shifted in meaningful ways. More protected somehow, like the forest itself is more carefully tended. Kratos shared this perception, his warrior's instincts detecting environmental modifications that suggested ongoing human presence despite the apparent wilderness setting. The alterations were so subtle as to seem natural, yet their cumulative effect created areas that felt distinctly separate from ordinary wildlands. They followed the deer tracks through this transformed landscape, noting how the trail seemed to follow routes that maximized ease of movement while minimizing exposure to potential observation from casual travelers. The path wound between natural features with efficiency that suggested deliberate design rather than random animal selection. The deer isn't just moving randomly, Atreus realized as patterns in the track selection became apparent. It's following established routes through this area, paths that provide optimal navigation between specific destinations. He studied the terrain ahead with new understanding. Someone trained it, or at least established corridors it learned to use. This insight suggested they had crossed not just geographical boundary but threshold into territory that remained under active management despite appearing abandoned. The concealed crossing served as gateway between ordinary wilderness and carefully maintained preserve, its hidden nature protecting both areas from unwanted intrusion. As afternoon light began to slant through the tree canopy at different angles, the deer tracks led them toward what appeared to be a natural clearing ahead. Through the trunks, glimpses of open space suggested meadow or glade where their quarry might finally be located, the successful conclusion to their extended tracking effort. There, Atreus pointed toward the clearing, excitement evident in his quiet voice. I think we found where it was heading. They approached the forest opening with careful steps, maintaining concealment among the trees while studying what lay beyond. The clearing revealed itself gradually as they drew closer. A circular meadow perhaps 50 paces across, surrounded by ancient trees whose branches created natural walls while allowing sunlight to reach the grass and wildflowers that flourished in the protected space. At the meadow's center, a small structure waited with quiet dignity. Not quite building nor monument, it appeared to be constructed from living wood. Branches and trunks woven together while still growing, creating organic architecture that remained vibrantly alive while serving clearly defined purpose as shelter or shrine. Incredible, Atreus breathed, studying the living construction with amazement. The trees grew into this shape deliberately. Guided somehow during their development, he could see how years of careful cultivation had created the structure. Patient work that required understanding both of natural growth patterns and architectural principles. The deer they had been tracking stood peacefully near the living structure, showing no alarm at their approach. Instead, it watched them with intelligent awareness that suggested familiarity with human visitors, rather than typical wild animal wariness. Its behavior confirmed that this place served as destination, rather than mere way station, in its territorial movement. It brought us here, Kratos observed, recognizing the truth of their situation. The tracks, the concealed crossing, the guided path, all arranged to lead us to this specific location. His tone held appreciation for the sophisticated planning involved, even while maintaining alert assessment of potential purposes behind such elaborate guidance. The living structure at the meadow's center drew their attention through subtle details that became apparent upon closer examination. Symbols similar to those carved in the birch tree appeared woven into the organic architecture, formed through guided branch growth rather than carved inscription. The runes glowed softly in the afternoon light, their luminescence so gentle as to seem natural phosphorescence rather than magical manifestation. The same runic style, Atreus noted, approaching the structure with respectful caution, but integrated into the construction itself, made part of the living wood. He studied how the symbols had been incorporated into the growing architecture, admiring the patience and skill required for such intricate work. Within the living structure, a comfortable space awaited, furnished with simple seating carved from the same living wood, a small table grown from intertwined roots, and shelves where various objects rested in organized arrangement, books bound in leather, carved implements whose purposes weren't immediately apparent, and containers that might hold preserved foods or other supplies. Someone lives here, Atreus realized, though no occupant was currently present, or at least visits regularly enough to maintain supplies and organization. The space showed clear signs of recent habitation. Dust-free surfaces, fresh water in a wooden cup, provisions arranged for convenient access. A note rested on the central table, written in the same runic style they had encountered throughout their journey to this place. The message was brief, but clearly intended for travelers who had followed the hidden path, welcoming them to shelter while explaining the absence of the usual caretaker on essential business elsewhere in the forest. "Welcome, patient observers," Atreus translated, reading the friendly greeting aloud. "Rest and refresh yourselves. The path reveals itself to those who seek understanding rather than conquest. Food and water are provided freely. Wisdom is earned through contemplation. I return at sunset with stories to share if you choose to wait. The invitation carried warmth and genuine hospitality, suggesting that their guided journey had led them to someone who valued the same qualities of careful observation and respectful approach that had been necessary for recognizing the concealed crossing. The living structure represented not just architectural achievement, but philosophical statement about harmonious integration with natural systems. We could wait, Atreus suggested, intrigued by the prospect of meeting the person responsible for these remarkable constructions. Learn more about this place and how it was created. His curiosity about the techniques involved was evident, as was his appreciation for the peaceful sanctuary they had discovered. Kratos considered this proposal, weighing potential benefits against time lost from their original hunting expedition. Yet their tracking of the deer had led to discoveries that might prove more valuable than simple meat for their larder. The hidden pathways, concealed crossing, and living architecture suggested knowledge that could enhance their understanding of their territory and its resources. Until sunset, he agreed, recognizing educational opportunity that justified the delay. We observe, we learn, and we maintain appropriate caution should circumstances prove different than they appear. They accepted the offered hospitality with gratitude, sampling fresh water and preserved fruits that had been left for visitors while studying the living structure with growing appreciation for its sophisticated design. Every detail served both functional and aesthetic purposes, creating an environment that felt simultaneously ancient and timelessly contemporary. As afternoon progressed toward evening, the symbols woven into the organic architecture began to glow more distinctly, their luminescence responding to changing light conditions with gentle rhythm that suggested breathing or heartbeat. The entire structure seemed increasingly alive, not just in the botanical sense, but as integrated organism that responded to environmental changes and the presence of visitors. It knows we're here, Atreus observed, watching how certain runic symbols brightened when he approached them, while others responded to his father's proximity. The living wood is somehow aware, reacting to our presence. This phenomenon aligned with their growing understanding of sophisticated magical integration that characterized this hidden preserve. Rather than imposing artificial constructions upon natural systems, the builders had created symbiotic relationships where architecture and environment enhanced each other through mutual cooperation. The deer remained peacefully in the meadow throughout their exploration, occasionally approaching the structure as if checking on their comfort, but showing no inclination to depart. Its behavior suggested familiarity with visitors, and perhaps specific role in guiding travelers to this sanctuary when circumstances warranted such direction. As sunset approached, footsteps became audible along the path they had followed earlier, confirming the note's promise of their host's return. Through the trees, a figure appeared, elderly but moving with vitality, carrying a bundle of gathered materials and wearing expression of pleased anticipation at discovering guests in the living shelter. "Ah," the hermit said with genuine warmth as he entered the clearing. "The deer brought visitors today. I wondered if someone might follow the old paths." His voice carried accent that suggested northern origins, though his precise heritage remained unclear from initial observation. He approached with confident familiarity, clearly at home in this remarkable sanctuary, uncomfortable with the presence of armed strangers who had been guided to his dwelling. His manner suggested someone accustomed to interesting visitors rather than fearful recluse hiding from human contact. "I am Bjarn," he introduced himself simply, settling comfortably onto one of the living wood seats with ease that spoke of long habitation. "Keeper of the hidden ways, student of growing things, and occasional guide for those who seek understanding of forest secrets. His presence transformed the living structure's atmosphere, activating responses in the organic architecture that created enhanced comfort and subtle sensory richness. The runic symbols glowed more warmly, gentle music seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, and even the air felt more refreshing and pleasant. "How long have you maintained this place?" Atreus asked, curiosity evident in his respectful question. The level of integration between human habitation and natural systems suggested years or even decades of patient development. "Time flows differently here," Björn replied with a gentle smile. "The sanctuary exists partly outside normal temporal progression, sustained by harmony between intention and natural forces. I began the work in my youth, but the trees and I have grown together across many seasons. As evening deepened around them, their host shared stories of the sanctuary's creation, the hidden pathways that connected various sites throughout the forest, and the philosophy that guided integration of human needs with environmental preservation. His words painted pictures of patient collaboration with natural forces, creating lasting achievements through understanding rather than domination. The deer settled near the structure for the night, completing the peaceful tableau of harmony between human and animal inhabitants of this protected space. Stars emerged overhead, visible through the canopy opening that crowned the living architecture, while gentle luminescence from woven runes provided comfortable illumination without harsh brightness. In this sanctuary, hidden behind concealed crossing and camouflage paths, father and son had discovered more than successful hunting ground or temporary shelter. They had found example of what patient observation and respectful approach could achieve. Integration rather than conquest. Harmony rather than dominance. Wisdom earned through understanding rather than taking through force. The footprints that had faded at the stream's edge had led them to deeper truths about their world and their place within it, teachings that would influence their journey long after they returned to familiar territory. Sometimes, the most valuable discoveries came not from pursuing obvious goals, but from following mystery with patient curiosity, allowing guidance to emerge from careful attention to subtle signs. As night settled fully over the forest sanctuary, they rested in comfort provided by living architecture and human kindness, knowing that tomorrow would bring new understanding of the hidden paths that connected their world in ways both practical and profound. The hermit Bjorn continued sharing wisdom as gentle darkness embraced their sanctuary, his voice weaving stories that seemed to emerge from the living walls themselves. He spoke of other hidden places throughout the northern forests, groves where time moved differently, springs that reflected not current reality but possible futures, paths that shortened distances between distant locations through careful navigation of liminal spaces. "The deer you followed knows many such routes," he explained, gesturing toward their four-legged guide who rested peacefully nearby. "Animals possess natural sensitivity to these threshold places, inherited wisdom that allows navigation between ordinary world and deeper mysteries. They serve as guides for those patient enough to follow rather than chase." Atreus listened with rapt attention, absorbing concepts that expanded his understanding of how magic operated in practical applications. Rather than the dramatic displays he had witnessed in divine conflicts, these forest mysteries demonstrated subtle integration that enhanced natural systems without disrupting their essential balance. "Mother spoke of such places," he said thoughtfully, remembering fragments of Faye's teachings that had seemed merely poetic at the time. Hidden roads between here and there, shortcuts that required specific understanding to recognize and traverse safely. The giants possessed profound knowledge of these connections, Bjorn confirmed with respectful nod. Their understanding transcended simple geography, recognizing how intention and awareness could influence which paths became available to conscious travelers. Your heritage likely enhances your sensitivity to such phenomena. The living structure around them responded to this conversation with increased luminosity, runic symbols pulsing gently, as if affirming the truth of these revelations. The organic architecture served as more than shelter. It functioned as focus point for energies that connected this sanctuary to a broader network of hidden sites throughout the region. Kratos, while maintaining his characteristic reserve, found himself increasingly impressed by the sophistication of systems they had discovered. The strategic advantages of concealed pathways and protected waypoints were obvious to his tactical mind, yet their creation and maintenance required a philosophical approach that differed markedly from his own historical methods. "How many others know of these places?" he asked, practical concerns asserting themselves despite the peaceful atmosphere. Hidden resources attracted unwanted attention if their existence became widely known, potentially transforming sanctuaries into contested territories. "Knowledge finds those who seek understanding rather than exploitation," Bjorn replied diplomatically. "The paths themselves provide protection, remaining invisible to those who would misuse them, while revealing themselves to travelers whose intentions align with their purposes." This selective accessibility explained how such elaborate hidden infrastructure could exist without drawing attention from hostile forces. The concealment operated not just through physical camouflage but through magical screening that evaluated visitors' motivations and character before allowing access to protected areas. The conversation continued deep into the night, their host sharing practical knowledge about forest navigation alongside philosophical insights about harmonious living. He demonstrated techniques for reading natural signs that indicated hidden pathways, methods for approaching threshold locations with appropriate respect, and protocols for maintaining balance between human needs and environmental preservation. "Tomorrow, before you depart," Bjorn offered, "I will show you the viewing stone that overlooks 3 valleys simultaneously, each reflection revealing different temporal perspective on the same geographical space. Understanding such multiplicity proves essential for navigating the complexities ahead." Atreus expressed eager anticipation for this additional revelation, while Kratos acknowledged the practical value such knowledge might provide for their ongoing journey. The deer lifted its head as if recognizing discussion of tomorrow's plans, then settled back into peaceful rest that suggested complete comfort with their presence. As the night deepened toward its quietest hours, gentle sounds from the living architecture created natural lullaby. Subtle creaking of growing wood, whispered movement of leaves responding to barely perceptible air currents, soft harmonics generated by runic symbols interacting with environmental energies. The entire sanctuary breathed with slow, steady rhythm that encouraged restful sleep. "Rest well, patient observers," Bjorn said softly as he prepared his own sleeping area within the organic structure. "Dreams in this place often carry additional insights, visions that complement waking understanding through different modes of perception. Trust what comes to you in sleep. The sanctuary protects and nurtures all forms of learning." Father and son settled into the comfortable sleeping arrangements, provided by living furniture that adjusted subtly to accommodate their individual needs. The runic glow dimmed to barely perceptible luminescence, providing just enough light for safety while encouraging natural circadian rhythms toward restorative sleep. In this protected space, where human wisdom and natural forces had achieved remarkable integration, They drifted toward dreams that would indeed carry forward the day's discoveries into new realms of understanding. The hidden crossing had led them not just across geographical boundary, but through threshold into expanded awareness of their world's deeper mysteries. Knowledge that would serve them well in challenges yet to come. And so our journey through the realms draws to a close for tonight. May Hypnos, god of sleep, watch over you as you drift through dreams of legendary proportions. If these tales of gods and monsters helped guide you to restful sleep, consider supporting our journey by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support gives me the strength to continue sharing these stories night after night. Remember, these videos play uninterrupted through the night, with no ads to disturb your slumber, just the soothing sounds of mythic realms to accompany your dreams. For those seeking passage to exclusive content, our Patreon offers early access to all videos and special playlists crafted to enhance your sleep. The link awaits in the description below. Until our next journey together, may your sleep be deep, your dreams be mighty, and your rest be undisturbed by the conflicts of gods and men. Sleep well, brave one.